Will atheism overtake theism? What contributes the most to atheism, Christianity, or Islam? The first use of the term atheism can be traced back to the Greek scholar Sir John Czech in a translation of Plutarch's On Superstition. The 17th and 18th centuries were distinct due to significant intellectual achievements that paved the way for an academic type of skepticism and a form of non-dogmatic atheism. There were many philosophers and thinkers responsible for this. In 1689, a Polish thinker Kazimierz Lizaczynski denied the existence of God in his De non-existential dei. Lizaczynski maintained that God is a creation of man and that humans created the concept of God to oppress others. In the 1700s, the likes of David Hume and Voltaire presented arguments and ideas that would provide the necessary intellectual seeds for atheism to take root. Voltaire argued for deism, a philosophical and theological position that asserts that a single creator exists but rejects the role of revelation and the authority of religious knowledge. David Hume wrote a corpus of material on the issue of God and religion. David argued that the idea of God was incomprehensible. Atheists are deterministically against ceding ground even to the concept of a creative, intelligent God. Those groomed in an atheistic environment lack any tendency, inclination, or necessity to entertain the existence of an all-knowing, omnipotent higher being. They, on the contrary, develop and hypothesize ideas like multiverses and the string theory in defiance of fine-tuning that points to an intelligent mind, arguing away the necessity of a prime mover, God. Dr. Roger Penrose, a British mathematician, Michael Behe, a biochemist, and Dr. Stephen C. Meyer, author of the famous Return of the God hypothesis, however, say that the most precise fine-tuning of the universe and intelligent design at the bacterium level, flagella, points to something much deeper, i.e., superintelligence. Atheists accept the existence of yet inaccessible dark matter and the law of non-contradiction without empirical data points but refuse to apply the same principle to intuitive cognition as proof of God's existence. They, resorting to a reductionist approach, instead demand an objectively verifiable empirical proof for God. Richard Dawkins is one of the new atheism stalwarts along with Lawrence Krauss, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, Late, and Daniel Dennett, who are pivoting around Darwin's theory of evolution. Now, Dawkins and Dennett are in their late 70s, no longer quite as active as before, and Hitchens, the somewhat charismatic of them all, is dead, are losing ground to theism. Lawrence Krauss was not among the first four horsemen but a later addition. The new atheism has faded from prominence, partly because, as its proponents acknowledged, it was not much different from the old atheism. And partly because it was a product of the War on Terror, or at least an intellectual response to what that war was ostensibly targeting, namely, radical Islam. 9/11, attack on trade towers. There is a growing divide between those who trumpet empirical evidence and those who question the cultural and social conditions to which empiricism remains blind. The prominent atheist philosopher Michael Ruse exclaimed, "I think Dawkins is ignorant of just about every aspect of philosophy and theology, and it shows." Ruse does not hold back in assessing the success of the new atheist strategies in addressing intelligent design and Christianity, describing them as absolute disasters in the fight against intelligent design. "We are losing this battle. What we need is not knee-jerk atheism, but serious grappling with the issues. Neither of you is willing to study Christianity seriously and to engage with the ideas. It is just plain silly and grotesquely immoral to claim that Christianity is simply a force for evil. As Richard Dawkins claims, more than this, we are in a fight, and we need to make allies in the fight, not simply alienate everyone of goodwill." Atheists take natural selection as an independent, blind, unguided, random process without any external intervening or originating force to dismiss God. According to Dr. John Lennox, however, the process or the mechanism does not argue away the agent, the explicator. Atheists religiously follow and propagate this point of view as a bedrock of atheism. They use their myopic view of the process and mechanism, deliberately ignoring its maker/source/cause/designer, arguing that natural mechanism/process obviates the need for a superfluous agent. They also justify this by citing the lack of objective, scientifically verifiable data points as evidence. Dawkins, to prove this assertion, describes the universe as, the universe that we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is, at the bottom, no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference. Many leading cosmologists and theoretical physicists advocate the idea that universes are the result of a physical process or set of laws. Essentially, they argue that the laws of physics had to exist for the universe and all the other universes to emerge. The problem with this version of the multiverse theory is that it takes more faith to believe in some physical process producing universes than God. Anyway, even if the multiverse theory is accepted, it would still not challenge the existence of God. Dawkins' God's delusion. Although atheists deny having faith or belief like theists, who believe in God, atheists believe in the non-existence of God, yet question, if the universe is creation of God, who created God? So, Dawkins is impliedly ready to embrace a created God. A fundamental principle in the philosophy of science dictates that when an explanation is understood to be the best possible account for a particular phenomenon, such an explanation would not require further explanations. Dawkins further asserts that atheism provides an emancipation from the impulse and reverence of worshipping an agent, whereas religion demands blind acceptance. Atheism plugs the gaps provided by religions. Ironically, 100 years earlier, cells were just blobs of protoplasm. However, since the 1950s, we have become aware of the vast information coding system in all cells, widening the gap by science rather than reducing it. According to Dawkins, science is based on rationalism, whereas religions are some forms of superstitions. According to John Lennox, however, atheism seriously undermines science because to understand the rational intelligibility of the universe, we also need a rationally intelligent mind. Its mechanisms and processes are designed and implemented by superintelligence. There is no probability of a rational mind emerging from genes dancing unguided, blind to the tune of DNA. Moreover, the consciousness with which we function in every sphere of our life, including science and religion, is a non-local and immaterial thing which exists with or without the material brain. So, defying consciousness is defying the self. The existence of irreducible consciousness pervading the universe at all levels destroys atheistic logical positivism or naturalism stance. Philosophical naturalism cannot adequately explain hard problem of consciousness, the finitude and dependency of the universe, the fine-tuning of the laws and the order in the universe, existence of objective morals, and much more. In the light of this, why would anyone adopt such a philosophy which prevents one from allowing reality to speak for itself? Dawkins writes in his book, "Since human life has been cobbled by unguided evolution, it is unlikely that our view of the world is accurate." Reductionist approach. In this case, where the genes are dancing to the unguided tune of DNA, how could atheism and the created God of Dawkins be considered reliable? According to Dawkins' atheistic thinking, those involved in the 9/11 terrorist attack cannot be called terrorists, for their genes were dancing to the tune of their DNA. Concepts, guidelines, and rules are not out there in the air, but the constructs of an intuitive, rational mind, therefore, cannot automatically transform from facts to value without an intelligent mind. Ultimate source of religion. Organized complexity in the universe, i.e., functioning complexity, therefore, ought to be irreducible, as proven by scientific calculations, necessitating a supremely intelligent being God. Darwinian theory is increasingly being challenged by many theist scholars from all walks of life, shaking the very foundations of atheism. Professor John Lennox, a mathematician, Michael Behe, a biochemist, Dr. Stephen C. Meyer, Dr. Hamza Sources, and Mohammed Hijab are the potential challengers. Professor Dennis Noble notes that Darwin's theory does not need improvement but replacement. Dr. John Lennox hits hard against atheistic assertions about natural selection and scientific evidence. He asserts science and God are not mutually exclusive but complementary explicators of the universe. God, the Creator, guides and explains through revelations, while the science, one of his created fields of knowledge, explains through empiricism. Author Alan R. Thainich's Cosmological Argument. I find it quite improbable that such order came out of chaos. There must be some organizing principle. God to me is a mystery but is the explanation for the miracle of existence, why there is something instead of nothing. The Cambrian explosion is another fact that challenges Darwinian theory of evolution. This explosion of new species is not connected with earlier life patterns and biology, as there is no fossil record available to link them. It is known as the missing artifact hypothesis. Abrupt Cambrian explosions with punctuation and stasis debunk Darwin's evolution and natural selection hypotheses. Repeated Cambrian explosion point to an intelligent mind at play. Also, Darwinian genetic mutation, destructive or reductive in nature, cannot produce better species as posited. 1*. Other proponents of New Atheism. Lawrence Krauss. An atheist, Krauss seeks to reduce the influence of what he regards as superstition and religious dogma in popular culture. He, besides his academic and scientific achievements, is known as a sexual predator. He is a theoretical physicist and a cosmologist, author of several books. He was found guilty of sexual misconduct by Arizona State University in 2018. 4 allegations range from offensive comments to groping and non-consensual sexual advances. So, he was relieved of the directorship of Origin Project. He then retired in 2019. He defended his association with the infamous Jeffrey Epstein in 2011. He is known for his anti-intelligent design rhetoric. He is a critic of Dr. Kaku's string theory. His postulation a universe from nothing has been criticized by cosmologist and theologian George Ellis. He said that it is not a tested science but philosophical speculation. His nothing is a quantum packet of matter or energy, which he lied about. His anti-theistic stance has been challenged by Christian theologians William Lane Craig and John Lennox. Thank you for using Panopreter Basic. He was also humiliated by a Greek Muslim scholar, Dr. Hamsis Sources, as he fell short of defending his position. Sam Harris. These 4 men, or should we, in the era of identity politics, say the 4 white, heterosexual horsemen of the counter-apocalypse, have become heroes, less to an atheist movement than to an outspoken rationalist one. Rationality is used here merely to enhance credibility. Dennett has since written about consciousness from a materialist, scientific perspective, making the case that what we think of as free will is an illusion. But he has also explored it from what, for want of a better phrase, can only be described as a spiritual outlook. During the conversation, Sam Harris tells them, the other 3 horsemen, that there is a place for the sacred in our lives, and Dawkins looks askance as if Harris were about to get out of prayer mat. Sam Harris is a well-known racist, white supremacist, and Islamophobe. Harris was a frustrated writer and a failed novelist when he found his subject. The terrorist attacks of 9/11 turned him into a nonfiction writer overnight. Daniel Dennett. He is fundamentally a contrarian and anti-religion philosopher, who considers religious inclinations to be mainly a byproduct of instinct-driven social phenomena. Like Dawkins, he also believes in mindless natural selection for the evolution of human consciousness and brain. Christopher Hitchens, late. He did not have much to offer as scientific or philosophical argument and resorted to belittling God by calling him cruel, crummy, capricious, unjust, incompetent, and callous as a father. He enumerated disease, infanticide, earthquake, etc., as the basis for his atheism. Many Christian apologists have rejected and ridiculed his tirade. He was a drunkard, a hard smoker, and often an unpredictable character who would attack everything under the sun. In his thinking, religion poisons everything. Should we agree with his assertion, then? God is not great, but religion's poisoned everything. Science is not great, but technology has poisoned everything. Atheism is not great, but atheists have poisoned everything. Hitchens says that while they may be winning the argument intellectually, in global terms, he and his fellow secularists are in a tiny, dwindling minority that's going to be defeated by the forces of theocracy. Note: if any of the above hardcore atheists ever changes his position, it will be in the following order: Sam Harris, Lawrence Krauss, Daniel Dennett, least likely, Dawkins, highly unlikely. Lawrence Krauss and Sam Harris seem to be misatheists rather than hardcore atheists. There is an array of Christian and Muslim scholars who are effectively checking the atheism advances. To name a few are William Lane Craig, Jordan Peterson, John Lennox, Michael Behe, Stephen Myers, Hamza Skortsis, Daniel Hakakaju, Mohammed Hijab, Adnan Rashid, Shabir Ali, etc. 2*. Logical positivism. The 1920s saw the emergence of logical positivists. This radical philosophical movement, inspired by scientific achievements, maintained that statements can only be meaningful if they are empirically verifiable. Post-1960s saw the death of logical positivism. One of the key reasons for its demise was the fact that it was self-defeating. The logical positivist's criterion for meaning was that any statement had to be verified by physical experience. However, this criterion itself was not verifiable by physical experience. Consequently, this criterion itself was meaningless. After the demise of logical positivism, the academic world saw the intellectual resurrection of theism. Time magazine in 1980 commented, "God is making a comeback." Most intriguingly, this is happening not amongst theologians or ordinary believers, but in the crisp intellectual circles of academic philosophers, where the consensus had long banished the Almighty from fruitful discourse. The basis was the cosmological discoveries of the Big Bang, fine-tuning of the universe, and the biological discovery of DNA, an information storage device. Francis Crick, being an atheist, confessed it was not a matter of chance but extraterrestrial work. Atheist assumptions. There exists no supernatural or divine reality of any kind. Metaphysical, methodological naturalism. Atheism claims that religious belief is irrational. Thank you for using Panopreter Basic. Epistemological. The assumption is that there is a universal and objective secular moral standard. Such a moral standard sets the new atheists apart from other prominent historical atheists such as Nietzsche and Sartre. Moral. The range of philosophical issues raised by the new atheists' claims and arguments is broad. As might have been expected, attention has been drawn to their epistemological views, their metaphysical assumptions, and their axiological positions. Their presuppositions should prompt more discussion in the spheres of philosophical theology, philosophy of science, philosophical hermeneutics, the relation between science and religion, and historiography. 3*. Design. Professor John Lennox, intelligent design can happily coexist with many natural selections such as antibiotic and pesticide resistance, antifreeze proteins in fish and plants, and more, explainable through the design mechanism. There could be a subtle route open to a subtle God to design life without overriding natural laws. If a quantum event such as radioactivity decay is not governed by causal law, then it breaks no law of nature to influence such events. Further, while we may be able to detect quantum manipulation, we may, nevertheless, be able to conclude confidently that the final structure is a designed structure. Science and God are not mutually exclusive but complementary explicators of the universe. Dr. Michael Behe. A machine cannot be functional during its gradual development, as is a fully functional mousetrap with irreducible complexity. It means for a functioning machine all necessary parts must be there. Top-down evolution, causation, leaves far behind Darwin theory and the concept of randomness. Origin of life. According to John Lennox, genetic code is a linguistic code, that cannot be produced by random selection but by intelligent design. The question, however, arises which, mechanical or mental cause, best explains the origin of life. Of course, it is mental. Franklin Harold says, we should reject, as a matter of principle, the substitution of intelligent design for the dialogue of chance and necessity, but we must concede that presently, there are no detailed Darwinian accounts of the evolution of any biochemical system, only a variety of wishful speculations. Harold never spelled out his reasoning for his assertion. I, however, think the principle probably boils down to this: design appears to point strongly beyond nature. It has philosophical and theological implications. Joseph Guardian says, let us go directly to the case of evolution and its mechanism. Microbiology and biochemistry have brought evolutionary insight here. We must have the audacity to say that the great projects of the living creation are not products of chance and error. They show us a creating intelligence and do so more luminously and radiantly today than ever before. Cognition. As stated above, atheists believe in objective, verifiable/empirical fact data points. Theists, on the other hand, posit intuitive cognition and a biologically rooted concept of belief in God. Most atheists take the cover of secular humanism, proclaiming that it is more practical than religions. Cognitive science, however, posits that belief in the concept of a God is biologically rooted in human beings. The academic Olivera Petrovich conducted research concerning the origins of natural things, such as plants and animals, and she found that preschoolers were about 7 times more likely to say God created them rather than humans or anything else. Petrovich concludes that the belief in a non-anthropomorphic God seems to be natural and that atheism is an acquired cognitive position. Atheism is cognitively effortful. Psychologist Paul Bloom argues that recent findings in cognitive psychology indicate that 2 key aspects of religious belief, a belief in designer, and a belief in mind-body dualism, are natural to young children. The conclusion that children are intuitive theists conforms with the Islamic teaching, that all children are born on fitrah, innate disposition, as Muslim. Overwhelming analytical thinking overshadows intuitive thinking due to cognitive colonialism, hence losing balance and resulting in the spread of atheism. Analytical thinkers, however, forget that all realities are not reducible to empirical data points and God is one of them. Analytical thinking is promoted at every level in the West, in the guise of secular humanism, for material progress, higher GDP, and military achievements. Christianity and Trinitarianism, due to their illogicity and irrationality, create incongruity, intellectual dissonance, and depression in their adherents. Present Christianity, a doctrine fabricated by Paul several hundred years after Jesus Christ, seems to have lost its edge due to dissecting God into 3, elevating a prophet, man, and a ghost to the level of God and truncating the real God. Then it killed man God, Son of God Jesus, for the sins of the adherents of Paulian doctrine, Paulianity, propagating an unhinged perverse life. Adultery, fornication, incest, homosexuality, gambling, drinking, pork consumption, and drugs, the essentials of Western society. Islamic monotheism, on the other hand, creates tangential focus, congruity, intellectual assonance, and unity of command essential for solace, thus eliminating the possibility of depression. It guarantees compensation in the hereafter for any injustice meted out in the temporal realm. It provides a restraint against evil and an impetus for good behavior. The monotheists are gifted a priori knowledge, intuitive cognition, fitrah, tendency, inclination, and urge to believe in God. Conclusion. Atheistic logical positivism or naturalism is a recipe for existential disaster. Denial of God is the denial of associated concepts of afterlife, divine accountability, justice, hope, value, purpose, and eternal happiness. Atheism lacks a sound foundation of reason and logic. It is an intellectual mirage. 20% of those who claim to be atheists, according to surveys, believe in the afterlife, and most believe in a supernatural being. Comment / like / share / follow and subscribe. Shakir Mumtaz. Author, thinker, analyst. This audio file was created by Panopreader Basic. You can download it at panopreader.com.